every time you covet what isn't yours and you act upon it, it will reduce you to being a liar.
It's a never-changing truth in an ever-changing world. Now I'm changed by the word. Your promise gives me word. Your way is flawless, always there for us. Changed by the word. Changed by the word. Changed by the word.
You're watching Changed by the Word. I'm Allison DeGeorge. For this portion of our program, we'd like to feature inspirational music from Jeremy Horn entitled Only a God Who Saves.
I am fragile, I am broken, made of dust and made of bone. Without you, I am nothing on my own. I am held by time and space. For now, I walk by faith. But there's one thing that I know that gives me hope. You are a God with healing in your hands. You are a God who heals today. You are a God who saves me from my sin. You are the only God who saves. And I am humbled by the notion that my heart is now your home, and your resurrecting power is now my own. Oh, this sinner's found salvation. It's in you and you alone that I placed all of my trust and placed my hope. You are a God with healing in your hands. You are a God who heals today. You are a God who saves me from my sin. You are the only God, the only God who has remade me, healed and saved me for your glory, oh Jesus. Redemption story, the joy before me, to bring you glory, oh Jesus. You are a God with healing in your hands. You are a God who heals today. You are a God who saves me from my sin. You are the only God who saves. You are a God who saves me from my sin. You are the only God who saves. Who saves. You are a God with healing in your hands. You are a God who heals today. You are a God who saves me from my sin. You are the only God who saves.
Here's Bruce Sofia with There's a God Who Judges the Earth, Part 1.
Just because Judgment Day didn't happen on May the 21st, 2011, which most of us knew was not going to happen, and we know the reasons why, doesn't mean Judgment Day is not coming. It is coming. And God is going to purify this earth with fire, cleanse it, like you take gold and put it in the fire and the dross comes to the top. And listen, when that day comes, I'll give away my message, so I won't. So aren't we at Psalm 58? We are, page 648, 649, and here's the caption. That is, this is the title. For the director of music to the tune of Do Not Destroy of David, a miktam of David. This is the second of 4 miktams out of the 150 Psalms. There are only 4. 3 are written by David, 57, 58, 59. And then it isn't until we get to Psalm 75 where the next miktam, or do not destroy, appears. And that's written by Asaph, who is one of David's music directors. Now, this psalm can be put into 3 divisions, and here they are. The first is this. David accuses his enemies of practicing lawlessness. The second division is David appeals to God to punish the lawless. And the last division is prophetic. David prophetically speaks of the righteous being vindicated. So again, this psalm can be put into 3 divisions or sections. David's accusing his enemies because they are living lawlessly and practicing lawlessness. David appeals to God to punish those who are living such. And then David prophetically speaks of the righteous being vindicated. What does that mean? It means there's coming a day when the righteous will be justified. Because we look around us today, we see wickedness prevail, we see wickedness triumph. We seem to say it has the trump card. Where is God? And clearly, David, in a prophetic voice, speaks about the day when righteousness will rule and reign, and wickedness will have no place. Now, here's the setting. King Saul has branded David as a traitor and sentenced him to death without a trial. He has proclaimed him an outlawed wolf. What does that mean? That means if you see David anywhere, I don't care where he is, he could be in the tabernacle with his hands on the horns of the altar, shoot him, kill him on the spot. He's a dead man. That was the edict. No matter where you find David, take his life. Don't ask questions. Don't think twice. Just shoot him on the spot. One of the commentators says this. Saul was surrounded by a group of fawning flatterers who fed his ego and catered to his foolish whims. 1 Samuel chapter 22. He put into places of authority people who use their offices for personal gain and not for the nation's good. And I'd like you to see it. Verse 1 of Psalm 58. Let's read it together, shall we? Do you rulers indeed speak justly? Do you judge uprightly among men? No. In your heart you devise injustice, and your hands mete out violence on the earth. Now, picture this. You remember what's happening here. So David is addressing the leadership, the authority of the nation, Saul and those who are in administration with him. And he says they're ruling unjustly. They are not upright. Their hands mete out violence on the earth. Their venom is like the venom of a snake, like that of a cobra that has stopped its ears, that will not heed the tune of the charmer, however skillful the enchanter may be. This is David's accusation, first division of the psalm, against the wicked, that is, the liars. What he's actually done is said, those of you who are rulers, those of you who legislate and govern this nation, you're liars. Sunday night, I had finished the staff agenda for Monday. We put together an agenda for pastoral staff. The staff meets from 10 to 2, and we look over the week and a number of other things. And I had finished, and I decided to turn on the television and watch Gino Jennings, who is extremely entertaining. A little on the harsh side, maybe a lot on the harsh side. He's apostolic in his belief. Now, all I have to tell you is this. The women sit on one side of the church. The men sit on the other side of the church. The women have these huge bonnets and hats and wear dresses. And most of the men wear suits and ties. He's quite, as I said, entertaining. But always in what he says, there's a piece of truth. In fact, a lot of truth. If you can look past the peripherals, that is how you do church or the style of church. There's some solid stuff in what he says. And what he was doing is he was addressing Satan and how he wasn't always wicked. See, you and I, the moment we think of Satan, we always think of him as this, slewfoot, the snake, the one who trips us up, the tempter. But that's not what he always was. My notes. Lucifer was his name before the fall, was the model of perfection. These are God's words. Lucifer was the model of perfection. He was full of wisdom, perfect in beauty, anointed as a guardian cherub, was blameless in all of his ways. And then God says this, until. Look at this. Created perfect, the model of perfection, anointed, that is appointed as a guardian cherub, and was blameless in everything he did until wickedness was found in him. What was Lucifer's sin? Lucifer's sin was pride, but in two forms, and that's what I want us to see this morning. Two forms. The first is this. He wanted what wasn't his. Can you say that with me? He wanted what wasn't his. He coveted. That's what coveting is. It's wanting what doesn't belong to us. I want you to see how despicable this is in the eyes of God. If we go to the book of Numbers, so go there with me, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, chapter 16, we read this story. Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you Levites." Now, who are the Levites? They were one of the 12 tribes. Simeon and Levi were brothers. They were one of the 12 tribes. And when Israel did that debauchery in front of the idolatry, the adultery, the debaucherous behavior at the golden calf, there were a group of men who stood with Moses and removed the wickedness, even their own flesh and blood. And God then removed the curse that was placed upon the Levites, or the tribe of Levi, back when they circumcised the men of Shechem and then went in and killed every one of them. So their dad had placed a curse on them. And at that scene with the golden calf, the curse is reversed. And God takes the Levites to himself. He says, although you can't own property, you'll be mine. So everything that is mine will be yours. Now, here's what happens. In this passage, it says, then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you Levites. Is it too little for you that God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of the Israelites, to allow you to approach him in order to perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle and to stand before the congregation and serve them?" This was the honor God gave to them. They were in charge of the sacred things, the tabernacle. Tearing it down, putting it back together again, carrying it, the furniture. They were in charge of that. Until pride is found in their hearts. Keep reading. He has allowed you to approach him and all your brother Levites with you. Yet you seek the priesthood as well. You seek the priesthood as well. Keep reading. Therefore, you and all your company that have gathered together against the Lord, what is Aaron that you should rail against him? And you know what happens here. See, these men developed a spirit of entitlement because they were given a sacred responsibility. They felt, as did Lucifer, that since I have been given this model of perfection, this beauty that is nowhere close to any other created being, I'm entitled to more than what God has given me. I can step over the boundaries. So the second form of Lucifer's pride is this, that he thought he could actually overthrow God, just as the Korahites thought that they were able to overthrow Aaron and Moses. On the third Wednesday of every month, as a pastoral staff, in fact, as an entire staff, we have what we call leadership training. This past Wednesday, or our last leadership training, we watched a video by Craig Groeschel. Craig is one of the leading speakers today in church leadership. The reason being, he has 80 services every weekend. And it was sort of a fluke how it all happened. He couldn't be someplace, so they thought they would simulcast. He would just stay in front of a camera and he would speak to everybody, and they found out it worked. And so today he has multiple what we call satellite locations, and he speaks, and there are over 80 services. So he was addressing the tension between the young generation and the old generation. Sort of like the tension that exists even now. Some of the older people walk out and they look at those kiosks and the ATM machine. They say, why do we have that in the church? And then others come by and say, this is so cool, man. I can't believe it. I don't have to bring my checkbook, which I don't have anyway. And I don't carry cash. And wow, I could just give it church. Tension, generational tension. This is what he said. Those of you in the older generation, let me talk to you for a moment. You've got to believe in the younger generation. You've got to pour yourself into the younger generation, because it is not the generation of the future. It is the generation of NOW. Something else, those of you who are of the older generation, which probably is my son-in-law Adam, but not me. But anyway, no. And then that's this. Don't you ever quit until you've breathed your last. Don't get tired in doing God's work. And he gave an illustration of a man who was 70 years old and said, I've just reached my peak. I remember Jack Hiles, when I heard Dr. Hiles. He said, hey, I've got greater vision and more energy now at 70 than I did any other time in my life. Those of you of the older generation, don't you quit. Don't you back up. Pour into the younger generation. And this is what he said about the younger generation. Here's your liability. You have grown up with an attitude of entitlement. You feel you're entitled to things. You want everything your parents took 40 years to get, and you want it in 4 months. I'm driving past this cul-de-sac on my way home, and there are cars lined up to pick up the kids. And I'm saying, don't your children have 2 legs? I mean, you mean to tell me they can't walk 3 blocks to the house? Parents pick them up. We are instilling in our children an attitude of entitlement. And it's what Lucifer had. See, Lucifer created perfect, but in his perfection, it turned into pride, and He wanted what wasn't his. Now listen to me. Whenever a person, read this with me. Whenever a person covets what isn't his or hers, and then they act upon that desire, it will make him or her a liar. Every time you covet what isn't yours and you act upon it, it will reduce you to being a liar. That's a one-sentence sermon you should write down. We've all witnessed it. Whether it's in business, whether it's in the church, whether it's in family relations. Hear me. I'll do funerals. And I can't believe it. The body's not quite cold yet. And people are fighting over who's going to get what. What is that about? How disrespectful can you be to the deceased? To argue about what it was they earned in their lifetime and what it is you are going to get. That's entitlement. My father left my mother relatively well off. If my mom chose to spend every dime of it and leave Sandy and me nothing, that would be fine with me. You know why? They earned that money, not me. Now, Mom, don't get any ideas. Because the Bible says the righteous leaves their children's children an inheritance. I'm just letting you know that. But if she spent every penny of it, that's fine. Guess what? They raised us, they gave us an education, they gave us the means to make a living. I'm not entitled to anything other than that. And so Lucifer, because of his position, felt he was entitled to something more. So back to Geno Jennings. This is what he said. Why did the angels follow Lucifer? Because they thought he could win. Think about that for a moment. Why would anyone follow anyone else that coveted or wanted something wasn't theirs? Because they thought they could win. Hear me. The liars always follow the liar. Liars always follow the liar. See, in their hearts, they were liars. They didn't say anything to anybody, but they wanted it. But they knew they weren't strong enough. They weren't the model of perfection. You know, they weren't who Lucifer was. And they knew they couldn't overthrow God. But there was something about Lucifer that they thought, this guy can do it, man. And guess what? Everything that's God's will be mine. And so they coveted what wasn't theirs because they were liars too. Now, here's the point. The point is this. Saul's followers, they knew the truth. They knew that God had anointed David and he was going to be the next king. They knew that. So why did they continue to follow King Saul? Because King Saul all along, because they were flattering fools. They didn't want to lose the bone. They didn't want to lose the goodies that had been passed to them. So they're thinking, if we side with Saul, then guess what? When David takes the kingdom, we'll make sure he doesn't take the kingdom. That way, what's his will be ours. But no one wins against God. No one. And God had decreed who was going to be the next king. I don't care how strong Saul is. I don't care how strong his followers are. I don't care how strong Lucifer is, how strong his followers are. No one ever wins against God.
So in this series, we've been looking at Judgment Day. What is it? When will it occur? We will also look at eternity and the millennium. But we take a little break, but it fits perfectly, looking at Psalm 58, where David says there is a God who judges the earth. and expresses his wrath every day. And oftentimes, because we see this loving God, we either see him as a God of wrath or a God of love, and we don't see that the two of them intercourse to bring to us a God who, although he will judge sin, has given us a remedy so that we don't have to be judged. It's the beauty, it's the love of God. And in this psalm, we see David saying, God, take care of my enemies. And at first it looks like it's a contradiction to the words of Jesus, who says we are to bless those who curse us, we are to love our enemies, we're to pray for those who despitefully use us, until we begin to realize that in the Old Testament, the sinner represents the sin. But when we get to the New Testament, Jesus draws the distinction between the sinner and the sin. And that is that we are to love the sinner and dislike the sin. And God takes care of that in the person of Jesus. He tells us he loves us, but he can't love our sin. He has to express his wrath on our sin. So hence, that's why there's a Jesus who goes to a cross, takes upon himself our sin, so that this almighty, righteous God can receive us and embrace us. He can't while we're in our sin, but when he has forgiven our sins, then we can become that son, that daughter, that citizen of heaven, that child of God. Right now, you can be that person whom God will take care of your sin. He'll express his wrath on your sin, but yet love you, embrace you, forgive you. It's a simple prayer that God will hear. Something like this: Father in heaven, thank you for loving me. Forgive me for the things I've done that are wrong. I am sorry. I confess to you that I'm a sinner. Jesus, come into my heart. I receive you as my Lord and Savior. Now, to every one of you who prayed that prayer, God heard you. He's taken care of your sin. He's expressed his wrath on your sin. Jesus has taken care of it. And now he's embracing you as a son, as a daughter, as a citizen of heaven. Congratulations.
For those of you that just prayed with Bruce Sofia today, we welcome you to God's family. It's the greatest decision that you'll ever make. And to get you started off with your new walk with Christ, we would love to send you our ABC pamphlet and our Congratulations CD to get you started in your new walk with Jesus. Please give us a call now at 1-800-CHANGED or go to our website at CBTW.org. Remember, for a gift of any amount, you may request our CD offer of the month, Are You Drifting?, where Pastor Bruce gives us 3 practical steps to keep from spiritual drifting and getting back on course. The offer is available now by contacting us at 1-800-CHANGED or CBTW.org. Join us again next time as we address another contemporary subject from God's perspective on Changed by the Word.
Changed by, changed.